Good evening, everybody, and welcome to tonight's Ward 1 All Candidates Debate. My name is Mark. I'm a member of the Lakeview Ratepayers Association, and I'm going to be acting as your MC, host, moderator, bouncer. We'll see how the evening proceeds. But I just wanted to go over a couple of quick housekeeping things before we get things going. If anybody needs the washrooms, they're downstairs. I feel like my wife is a flight attendant and pointing out the emergency exits are on the sides over here. We do hope to wrap up around 8:30 because we do want to give people time if they want to speak to some of the school board trustees that are going to be setting up on the side over there. In terms of the way the evening is going to move forward, we've collected questions in advance. They've been vetted at the side table. If you have a last minute question that you would like to see if we can squeeze in, please bring it to the table at the side. Each candidate will be given 5 minutes at the beginning for an intro. We will then proceed with the questions. Each question will be 3 minutes in terms of response. Each candidate will get a chance. We'll be keeping time on the side. Candidates have already been told if they see the yellow sign, that means 30 seconds and to start wrapping it up. So we decided to go in alphabetical order. So the first person speaking this evening will be Councillor Dasko, who will do his introduction. And then we move through the questions. We'll just keep rotating through. But before I move on, I would like to begin by acknowledging the land on which we gather and which the region of Peel operates is part of the treaty lands and territory of the Mississaugas of the Credit. For thousands of years, Indigenous people inhabited and cared for this land and continue to do so today. In particular, we acknowledge the territory of the Anishinaabe, the Huron-Wendat, the Haudenosaunee, and the Ojibwa and Chippewa peoples, the land that is home to the Métis, and most recently, the territory of the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation, who are direct descendants of the Mississaugas of the Credit. We're grateful to have the opportunity to work on this land, and by doing so, give our respects to its first inhabitants. And without further ado, I would like to call Councillor Dasko to do his introduction.
Thanks. Usually these days they lower the mic for me, so I appreciate it. Well, good evening, everyone. I'd like to thank, first of all, the Ratepayers Associations of Sherway, Applewood, Lakeview, and Orchard Heights for hosting us this evening. As a lifelong resident, it's truly an honor to serve you. It's no secret that I'm a major proponent of community consultation, and during the last 4 years, I have hosted more public engagement initiatives than any other ward in the city. Topics have included the annual budget, small business, traffic, coyotes, just to name a few, and it's my commitment to continue this spirit of public engagement. No major decision should ever be made without input from our communities and our stakeholders. I'm a strong believer in being hands-on with the community as I actively participate in liaison committees, such as the Metrolinx LRT, and work with the Sherway Ratepayers Association on such issues as the MTO-DIXIE interchange, moving nightly truckloads of debris from the community to a more appropriate location. And I also host monthly meetings with the presidents of the Ratepayers Associations to listen and deal with issues and concerns and provide updates to be shared with our respective communities. And also a quarterly meeting of the Applewood, Sherway, and Orchard Heights Ratepayers presidents to ensure the communities receive the same priority as elsewhere in the ward. A significant topic has been development and the conflict between the provincial and municipal goals. Provincial policy changed in 2019 and stresses the need for intensification, and this encourages some in the development industry to come forward with ever-increasing heights and densities. I am a strong believer that our official plan and local area plans be respected. While I support reasonable and responsible development, I have and will continue to work collaboratively with our communities and the development industry to ensure that the character of our communities is preserved and strengthened. I have voted against more development proposals than any other councillor because the proposals did not fit. In some cases, like the outrageous potential development plan for Dixie Mall, I fought hard against it and included our ratepayer groups and citizens, and the result is no application was ever filed with the city to this day. Another major issue is the growing congestion along Lakeshore. I have worked with and will continue to work with local businesses, the Port Credit BIA, and the community, along with city staff, to come up with and provide really innovative and practical solutions. The ward continues to be a busy place. The vision continues, returning the waterfront in Ward 1 to the community and for all. In total, it will be over 145 acres of new parkland and conservation area. That includes the Jim Toby Lakeview Conservation Area, set to open in 2025. I am proud to work with incredible people to enhance our community and promote our local artists. I'm proud to have brought Classic Car Thursdays and initiated the Sunset Sunflowers and Sounds, along with murals and providing more opportunities for artists. Working with our Indigenous community is also very important to me, and has been an honor to work with Dr. Carolyn King on the Moccasin Identifier Project and the Crosswalk, which resulted in the Moccasin Identifier Project in Lakeview. Another collaboration is with the community and the Mississaugas of the Credit on the Indigenous Arts Walk, which will be along the banks of the Credit. The first work was already completed and done by Sawmill Sid, entitled This Dance, which is at Lakeshore in here, Ontario. Work on the environment is a top priority. I serve as Vice Chair on the Environmental Action Committee and implementing the first significant tree bylaws in years, working to have district energy implemented in Lakeview, which will reduce carbon emissions by 2,500 to 7,500 tons per year, and regularly working in the community to address and reduce garbage and actively organize and participate in park cleanups. Proud to have worked at the regional table to ensure that the GE Booth wastewater treatment plant will also be covered in the near future, ending the occasional sewage smell. Many more initiatives are critical to Ward 1, such as continued advocacy to the provincial government regarding prohibiting and increasing penalties for loud modified mufflers, working collaboratively on our parks and to provide more park amenities and placemaking. It's also important now, more than ever, to have the strongest voice with experience and leadership to continue to attract federal and provincial funding and to continue to advocate for fiscal efficiencies to ensure holding the line on taxes and ensuring value and fairness for taxpayers. I look forward to the evening ahead and to answer the questions as we spend our time together. Thank you.
Hi, good evening, folks. My name's Andrew Gassmann. Pardon my voice, I'm just getting over a bad head chest cold since last week, so originally I was going to send my regrets, but I told Trevor I wouldn't miss this opportunity. My background, so I'm a lifelong resident of South Mississauga. I border on all three nodes of the ward, so Applewood Acres, Lakeview, and Mineola. I'm a president of the largest, probably the largest ratepayer association and the oldest ratepayer association in the city of Mississauga for over almost 20 years. My background is 25 years experience in the financial services sector, including senior management roles. I presently run my own consulting practice for both management consulting and project management. I've served on various public and non-for-profit boards, as well as lately, as of last year, completed the best, or what is seen as best in breed, governance designation through the Rotman School of Business. It's the ICD.D, so the Institute of Corporate Directors designation. I volunteered on numerous city committees and community events, and hence received the Civic Award for recognition for over 10 years of voluntary community service from former Mayor Hazel McCallion. I have a track record of making success, in making community concerns heard, and I understand all of the issues facing Ward 1 residents and opportunities to make things better. So one of the questions that was asked me early on is why Ward 1 and why would I choose to run in Ward 1? I can tell you from reviewing almost every council meeting and every planning and development committee meeting, you do need a stronger voice. I felt the need that you were not represented as strongly as you should be. So hence, some of the other platforms came out with strong and strongest. I chose not to go with that lingo, and I just said I'm the right choice. Basically, the city, what really inspired me to run is back in June at the pre-budget meeting. You have it as quoted in the Mississauga News, and it's on the back of on this back of my flyer that I sent out this week. You have a proposed 5.7% tax increase for 2023 due to the city's $70 million budget deficit. I was stunned that all of council didn't say anything to this. There was not any questions, not any discussion around it, including from Councillor Dasko. I really felt that, coming out of COVID, we cannot afford a property tax increase. I've canvassed over 10,000 homes in the last 3 months. I can tell you, I hear it time and time again, people can't afford food, they're skipping grocery bills, they're skipping filling up their car 2-3 weeks, they're filling $20 at a time. We can't afford a property tax increase. Inflation is at record levels. We need someone that has the fiscal oversight to look at the books and ask the right questions. City Council is here to serve as cross purposes for staff. Quite often, they're just in agreement with staff. No questions they thank staff profusely for the reports, and no questions are raised. The idea is that they are like the board. They represent the shareholder of the corporation, which is all of you, the taxpayer. So why are there no questions? That was my main premise for running, and my plan is very simple. So I have a 6-point plan in my flyer that I sent out. It's basically a zero property tax increase for 2023. Brampton's done it. Mayor Brown has done it for 2 years. It's very possible. And you can do this without cutting. You don't need to cut city services or staff. There's ways to do that through attrition and other means. Revitalize Port Credit and Lakeview through smart growth and intensification. Advocate for infrastructure funding with existing relationships with MPs and MPPs. Move infrastructure projects along faster. I too have sat on the LRT Liaison Committee for 10 years. I hardly see a councillor present. The project was due to be completed in 2018. Then due to COVID, they said 2022. Now it's 2024. On and on. Safe neighborhoods and streets and more public-private partnerships, and I see my time is up. Thank you very much, and I look forward to tonight's event.
Good evening, everybody. Nice to see so many friendly faces, and thanks very much to the 4 organisations for putting this together. Every 4 years, you get to decide who will be the next councillor. Not the mayor, or former mayor, or other politicians, developers or business people who may not even live here, but you. You choose who will be the most effective person to take on this role and be your voice at City Hall. Running against an incumbent is almost impossible. They have their team in place, including paid staff, 4 years of photo opportunities, ribbon cuttings and social media. On the other hand, I had to take leave of absence from my job, build a team from scratch, create marketing and social media, plus find funds to get all of this done. A year ago, concerned residents suggested that I should consider running for council. I shrugged it off until I was asked by others. As some of you in this room know, I am not a politician. I am, however, a community advocate, and certain events prompted me to make the decision between stepping up or shutting up. I've been at this for a long time, long before the incumbent appeared in 2018. I joined the Lakeview Ratepayers Association 12 years ago, and since then I've held various roles, including president. Leading the association in 2012 in the Lakeshore Corridor Summit and building a relationship with Port Credit. Working with city staff in 2015 while finalising the Lakeview Local Area Plan. working in 2019 with Applewood, Orchard Heights and Sherway on the DIXIE concerns. During the last 5 years as chair of the Lakeview Community Advisory Panel, leading the group as liaison between community, developer and city planning staff at the Lakeview Village, and the honour of serving as advisor to our local Indigenous group, the Eagle Spirits. They say you cannot fight City Hall. I do, however, have a record of bringing people and community groups together to work in collaboration, make change, and get things done on your behalf. Mike and I have raised 4 boys in the MINEOLA, Hillcrest, and CAWTHRA school communities, and living in Ward 1 for over 30 years. I have worked in investor relations, communications, and marketing, and operated two small businesses with Mike. The vision of South Mississauga is now a reality. The 2 large development sites on the south side of Lakeshore are underway within the areas of planned density. However, the impact of the unplanned density on the north side of Lakeshore and into our stable neighbourhoods is affecting us all. Little thought was given to our roads and transit during the city planning process. The impact on us, the existing residents and taxpayers, and our ageing infrastructure has not been addressed. The responsibility falls to the city and the region, but not the developers. We have an LRT that is moving ahead, and a proposed BRT for 3 stops in Lakeview that begins nowhere and ends nowhere. After a decade of master planning, we need a solid plan for our roads, transit, and mobility, working together along the Lakeshore corridor and not straining our side streets. The safety and security of residents should be paramount. Allowing our 8 to 80-year-olds to cross the street safely is critical. The importance of health and well-being was proven during COVID. The green spaces were promised as part of the density. We must ensure these spaces are well funded and maintained by our city. These parks are regional spaces, not community parks. Our waterfront is for everyone. At the end of the day, what's in it for us? We now have increased noise, construction vehicles, dust, traffic congestion, increased car thefts. The list goes on. But what are the benefits for us? We need the 15-minute city and pedestrian-friendly streets. The ground floor spaces and public realm must be great. Our parks should be clean and safe. Public consultation must be part of the process, and we need a councillor that will fight for our community and put our interests first. We are now at a crossroads. We can be great, but we must do better. Now is the time for bold leadership so that we have a Ward 1 where no one is left behind and where we all win. Thank you.
I'd like to thank the candidates for recognizing all the ratepayers, which I forgot to do in the opening. So, again, the 4 owners associations that are here, Applewood Acres, Orchard Heights, Sherway Homeowners, and of course Lakeview Ratepayers that I'm a part of. I also forgot to mention that there will be 3 opportunities for the candidates to rebut a question, and they'll have 60 seconds to do so. I'm going to each hand them their, what I've been called the rebuttal sticks. I also want to thank everyone for this great turnout and also for behaving in the first little part here, and I hope it continues this way. To keep things moving along, if you could save your applause to the end, and please refrain from any booing. We'll leave it at that. So. The first question for the evening, which will go to Andrew, and then move to Deb, and then to Stephen. What are the biggest fiscal challenges in our municipality, and what do you envision as the best ways to address them?
Thanks, Mark. I'm glad you raised this. So it's interesting. Only my platform covers the fiscal side. So this is my number one point. So there needs to be operational efficiencies. So there are very few ways. When I've spoken at council, last in 2019, I made a deputation on behalf of my RA and as an individual resident. The city's buses needed to be replaced. The procurement process for buses in 2022 and 2023 was to the tune of almost $500 million. 250 in 2022 and 250 in 2023. I made the suggestion at that time that with the ISIP funding, for those of you that are familiar with that or aren't, it's the Investment or Infrastructure Canada expenditure plan. So they were giving, the feds were giving $750 billion and the province was matching that with $250 billion. So a total of $1 billion. I advocated that the city consider electrifying their fleet to the tune of a savings of $55 to $60 million in diesel fuel. The response, there was no discussion, hardly any discussion, no discussion, I remember at council, but the mayor said to me that procuring diesel buses are still the cheapest way, and so they went with diesel hybrid buses to the tune of $500,000 versus $1 million. I actually called 3 bus companies, costed it out, and the payback was about, at that time, 5 to 7 years. Again, no convincing. Sure enough, 2 years, 3 years later, diesel prices have almost tripled, and hence one of the major reasons they're in a $70 million deficit is due to their diesel costs and the pandemic running empty buses for 2 years. So poor operational decisions and poor leadership lead to deficits, which then leads to no choice. Cities are not permitted to run deficits, so there's no choice but to add it onto the tax bill. And the second benefit of that is that they would have achieved their 2030 emissions targets. They want to go green by 2030. How do you do that running diesel buses, right? So there's a simple, one very simple solution. And Councillor Dasko was the one who, with Mayor Crombie, went to Sweden, spent $8,000 to $10,000 of your tax money to discover electrification in 2018 or 19. Then they come back and they don't do anything about it. And hence, you have this article in the Mississauga News, which is just factual, and you have a potential increase of 6 to 10% next year in your tax bill. Why? Thank you.
So it's hard to follow somebody who's the fiscal expert, obviously. But I do know that that there is expected 5.7% increase in the coming year on our taxes, which is of great concern. I believe that that was already discussed, and as Councillor Dasko will know, as he was part of that discussion with the Audit Committee earlier this year in the spring. We do know that the costs significantly are coming from building of new fire holes, and that's been one of the things that have been part of a big concern. And I think we need a really strong look at where we're spending money. We also need to look at where councillors are earning money. I think that's an important issue as well. So that's all I have to say on the issue. Thanks.
To say that we don't have budget pressures is an understatement. Of course we do. We are going through COVID right now, and we have gone through, and the cities right across the province, and many right across Canada, have received funding from higher levels of government. When it comes to where the city is, and we have been no stranger to that, our My Way buses, they did go down to, they lost 80% of their ridership at the peak of the pandemic. And the costs are still borne, they still continue on. Safe Start refunding, that was a significant component of it. There is still restart funding that is available there. And I will say, when it comes to, for example, the buses, hybrid buses are what went into The ISET funding is what it's called, and it was a funding bucket that did come down from the federal and provincial governments. It's also the municipalities do contribute to. Going to Sweden, yes, this was something that we had done. It was a delegated trip, which actually came out of our budgets, and this was one that was a very strict schedule. I did do a presentation. I'm not sure if you get that or not, that we had done that, but full transparency on what we had done, and part of that was looking at the buses. The electric buses, if you look at it, there's two ways to do them. You either charge the buses along your line, or you take them back to the yard. Now, there's a significant issue with one part of taking them back to the yard. Our yards are not built to handle those buses. They're too tall. So that would have included another few $100 million in actual building of this facilities for them. On the other side of it, along the way, as you're going to charge these things, they're not at a technology yet where it would be proven to be responsible. So a lot of work has gone into that. When it comes to our annual budget in terms of where we're sitting, that, by the way, was an update to council. And so that's how that worked. And so the actual budget negotiations and talk on budget, etc., does not start until January of the next coming year. That is being mindful and respectful of an election cycle that we're going through. They do it every time. And so I just wanted to make mention that for myself, I've always been harsh on staff, and also to see where we're able to cut and save. And the result is, for example, when we were going into, this is at the regional level, when we were going into a situation where we were possibly going to separate from Peel as a Mississauga council, there was millions of dollars in new furniture that they were looking to foot at the regional level, and I worked diligently. So we put that on an indefinite hold until we knew where things were going. So this is one of several initiatives that I have done, and I've been very proactive with it. And also, I do serve on the audit committee as well. Thank you.
And we're going to have our first rebuttal, 60 seconds.
I lose one possible.
Coffee's Thursday.
Oh, Coffee's Thursday, sorry. Thank you, Mark. So if I can just rebut that, a couple of comments there. So the first thing, you have very few places within the city. So as Councillor Dasko pointed out, you can't save on the unionized employee costs, the fire, the police, the EMS. You always get that. Is Chris Mackey here in the crowd tonight? No, I'm sure he'll be here. He'll be there on Thursday. He always asks, how can you save? He goes through every line item of the budget and says, where can you save? And the usual answer back from council is, well, we can't do this and we can't do that, and our costs are this and our costs are that. And you get the same, I've been there for 20 years, you get the same answer. There's simple ways. So the diesel cost, by the way, the kicker there is now, instead of being a savings of 50 to 60 million a year, because diesel costs are at $2.40 or $2.60 a liter, it's closer to $120 million a year. You can double that cost savings. So the payback is even quicker on those electric buses. And the point about how to do it logistically, when I called New Flyer and a couple of other companies that are the suppliers, they figured this out in cities like LA, much bigger cities than Mississauga. So, and they're willing to even throw in the car charger. It is like your parents buying you a brand new Tesla and you saying you don't want to put in the charger. That's just one example. Thanks.
So question number 2, we'll start with Deborah. There is a perception that Mississauga Council is a behind-the-scenes decision-making council, and that community engagement has been treated as a mandated necessity as opposed to a determining voice. Do you agree that this public perception is warranted, and what can you do / address it as only one of 11 members of council?
So one of the issues that we found is we go through what we think is community consultation. However, we often find that there's been a preordained decision made, and that's very hard when you go through a year and a half thinking you're going to get somewhere, you realise you're going to be nowhere. And actually, our Lakeshore East Corridor study is just that. We have had instances where we go through a planning application where we've had in the past 2 to 4 stories around. Then it goes to a recommendation report that turns it down at City. It's then taken to the OLT, the Ontario Land Tribunal. It never reaches the full tribunal. It takes a year to get there. I've been on 2. What happens is the city lawyer and the developer lawyer speak together, they mediate, they come up with a decision within 4 or 5 months. It's done behind closed doors. That decision is then taken to council behind closed doors, and it is approved. This is very hard for people, especially if you live behind a building that has this application, and the effect it's going to have on you, knowing that that's nothing that you can speak to or you can have any word on. So it is important that full transparency and full community consultation happens, and I think the community is tired of being pushed around and thinking that they're really having a say, when at the end of the day something has already been decided, and it's very difficult, it's getting more and more difficult to get people out to attend this consultation, because the general consensus is, what's the point? The decision is made. I'd like to see that change. I'd like to see more transparency. And I think during COVID, we've lost a lot of transparency at City Hall. We've been kept behind WebEx. It's very controlled now. We don't get those open meetings that we used to have with boards around the room when we could speak directly to staff. And I believe that the general public is really feeling that, and they start to lose complete trust in our council and our planning staff. Thank you.
Well, thanks for the question. And I will say, when it comes to public consultation, as I mentioned in my earlier comments, nobody has had more than we have in Ward 1. And it's not by accident. It's I demand it. I demand it of staff, and I demand it of the development community. As a matter of fact, when they have their meetings, I make them pay for their mailings. Because if they're looking to do this on our community, the least that they could do is bear the cost of the meetings. And when it comes to lip service, nothing's further from the truth. And this is where every single stretch of the way I ask and I demand answers as to how things are done, why things are done, and why we cannot always strive to do better. So important for us to do, and this is where experience really does matter. Because when it comes to, for example, the Lakeshore East Corridor study, the reason why that came into place, some may know and some may not. It was because we were seeing a lot of applications coming forward that were way over and above what the official plan and local area plans were. And under the new provincial legislation, Bills 108, 109, etc., we had very little recourse to push back. And so the whole idea there was, again, some people on council, I am one vote, and anybody that wants to tell you any other way is each council member has one vote, as does the mayor, and you have to end up building some. You have to build together to get the results that you're after, and as we do this, you make sure that things make sense. The Lakeshore East Corridor study basically took the feet out from under a lot of developers that were coming in with larger proposals. That still maintains throughout most of the corridor 2 to 4 stories, and there's literally 3 to 5 areas where they can go to 8 stories. And this is done very specifically and took over a year. And it was not just something that happened just to waste my time or anybody else's time. This was done in full consultation with everybody, and it took over a year to do.
and is still actually being challenged right now at the Ontario Land Tribunal because they feel that it's simply not enough. And so I will defend my having public consultation and let people know that it is very much something that I take to heart and that I advocate for each and every day. Thank you.
The public consultation process, or how decisions are arrived, and I think Ms. Goss hit the nail on the head. Through COVID, it seems that the virtual option to either view or have input at council has become very, very challenging. They've limited the time, they've limited the options, and decisions are being done more and more. If you look at city agendas, why are there so many agenda items that are done in camera? There are very few things that need to be done in camera. If you're dealing with a legal matter or employee negotiations for union contracts, perhaps, but every agenda has in camera, in camera, in camera, in camera. Why not put the whole council meeting in camera, right? So, and the issue I think on development, what's so interesting is that yes, Councillor Dasko has said no to almost every development application in the last 2 years, but guess what? Those developers, they just appeal it now. They know the rules, they know the workarounds. They appeal it, they go to the OLT, they have to wait 120 days. They appeal it with the province, they go to the Ontario Land Tribunal, and they get 4 times the density that they've asked for. So if they've asked for an 8-story building, they'll give them a 40-story building or a 30-story building. And then the community doesn't get any benefit. So another option would be, or what I'm proposing is that why not negotiate with the developers? I've spoken to a few of them. On the Lakeshore Corridor or on the Dundas Landowners Association, they're willing to give back to the community. They're willing to put in $5 million parks behind their condos. Why not get something for the community? Versus just saying no, pretending to look strong, and then it goes to the OLT, and the province decides. And they don't care because they don't know the corner of Dixie and Lakeshore or in Port Credit, and they don't care about the fact that Port Credit, you know, we want to keep the port in Port Credit. Doug Ford doesn't care about the port and Port Credit, and neither with any other party. So they just look at it and say, oh, that's a nice corner. The BRT is going along, the bus rapid transit is going to go along Lakeshore, and the here Ontario LRT will take care of that. And sure, put in 30, 40 stories. So you end up with actually more intensification than the community wants without any input or consultation. So I hope that answers that question. Thanks.
60 seconds for Deb.
I just wanted to add, we've always had public consultation in this community because we love public consultation in South Mississauga in Ward 1. It's what we do. The Lakeshore East Corridor study was a shell game. I'm sorry to say it, but nobody wanted what it was showing us and what came out of it. And at the end of the day, I begged Mr. Dasko to go back to the community and explain why we were going up from 2 to 8, we were going 2 to 8 stories on some parts of the Lakeshore, why we couldn't take 3 to 6, just like other parts of the area. And I said, if we at least go up to 6, maybe the developers will come in 2 more, but instead of 2 more at 6 to 8, they're coming in at 2 more from 8 to 10. So we didn't win anything, we lost. Thanks.
60 seconds for Stephen.
Thank you. Well, that's actually very misleading, and that is not the case. This is something that the Lakeview Ratepayers Association did know about and was at the table for, and part of that was actually that the applications that are coming in, the 8 to 10 as being mentioned right now, they were filed under the previous regime, not under the new Lakeshore East Corridor study component. So that is actually factually not correct. I just wanted to clarify that just for everybody. And then the other part of that is, well, is the 6-story component. I fought hard for that. I went to our whole legal team, and our whole legal team said, under the new legislation, this was not enforceable. So you would be coming forward, putting something forward that would just have absolutely no teeth to it. So that's why there's 3 to 5 places that would accommodate up to 8 stories. And actually, wherever they are going with 8 stories, there's a 45-degree angular plane that has to be met from behind. And then when you come to the other side as well, after 2 to 4 stories, there has to be a significant step back as well to have that pedestrian edge and feel. Thank you.
Question number 3 of the evening. We'll go, Stephen. The creation of a linear heritage park on the south side of the Lakeshore between Dixie Road and East Avenue to preserve the existing green spaces was first proposed by the community as part of the Lakeview Legacy Vision and championed by Jim Tovey. Last year, a petition supporting this idea was presented to Council. More recently, during the Lakeshore Corridor study, the LRA's planning panel submitted a vision for the park and build form that stepped back to ensure sunlight and sky views, yet the city's report didn't even acknowledge it. Do you support the creation of a linear heritage park to preserve and enhance the well-used trail and treed areas? And if so, what will you do to prevent the Rangeview development from encroaching into it?
Thanks. Another great question, because this has come up several times and is part of ongoing conversation even today. And part of that is also talking about land that basically the city does not own and mandating people to put in tree lines and things like that. This is where that collaboration, I think that has been mentioned a few times before, which I'm extremely big on, trying to find out where we can come up with things like that. And this is where, for example, the Rangeview area, some may be aware, some may not be. And this is along the Lakeshore Corridor. It goes from essentially East Avenue all the way over to Hydro Road. And this is an area that, again, is just going through its planning stages right now. So there's a very great opportune time to be able to do this, but to be able to mandate it, there's not a mechanism for it. Under that Lakeshore East Corridor study, that would come afterwards, and that is still very much a part of our conversations. One thing that I have done and worked with community on, and is very much part of plans, and that is at Lakeshore and East Avenue, there's some shared space, essentially, that's got Peel Region. It has the city's Transportation Works Department, but there's also some other land there as well that's owned by the city. And that is to take all of that, bring it all together to come up and make a great public space for everybody to be able to use. That we're talking about also including some community gardens there as well. So very much top of mind and wanting to have an incredible streetscape. And I've always talked about, and a lot of you know that have listened to any of the talks that we do have in the community, is wanting to create an incredible ribbon along Lakeshore. So we've got this great Main Street feel from Port Credit all the way through to the other side of Lakeview. So very much something that is constantly being worked on, and proud to be a part of it along with everybody in the community. Thank you.
So I'm not familiar with that petition. However, I can say that I'm a huge proponent of preserving our parks. So under the official plan, for those that aren't familiar, so the city has an official plan, they have secondary plans, and they have local area plans. And communities such as yourselves have very strong input into the local area plans and the secondary plans, which then stream up and circulate back to the official plan. The funny part that I've experienced over the years is that, for example, in Ward 7, which, by the way, under current boundary reviews may merge with Ward 1, another reason why I decided to run in Ward 1. If Ward 1 gets changed to Queensway, it becomes even larger. And under the current rules, for example, in Ward 7, we're owed 120 acres right now of parkland. The city's purchased about 30 acres at Highway 10 and Dundas area in Old Cooksville, but we're still short, probably 90 acres. So it's like the reverse of asking why the official plans and secondary plans don't respect the development. Why don't they respect the parklands? if we're owed, if the communities are owed parklands, then they're owed parklands. In this case, it sounds like the city does not own this property, this particular piece of parcel of land, but, you know, they could purchase it, or they can, you know, work with, I'm big on public-private partnerships, so, you know, I mean, if someone wants to develop that land, then, you know, let's work together with them in terms of getting something back for the community again. So parkland is definitely, you know, people need, by the way, on a sidebar note, so the Lakeview Village project looks great, very glossy. I was really impressed when I first saw that. I thought to myself, wow, this is good. We're going to convert some industrial lands to residential, which is much needed, and we're going to make it beautiful, and the pictures are all really glossy. Then I did something last week which was shocking to me. A resident that I spoke with said, why don't you do me a favor and look at the topographical Google Earth view of that site? And I did that. Oh my God. It is next to 3 open pools of raw sewage. No wonder Lakeview stinks. It smells. So that is an example of wrong development. You know, talk about, you know, Councillor Dasko says he pushes back on developers. You don't put 8,400 residents next to the poop. Right? I hate to be blunt, but I mean, it is a water treatment plant at Lakeview and Hydro Road. That is the wrong place to put folks. Right? The Four Sisters were there, they demolished the Four Sisters, the smokestacks, the coal. You talk to residents, all of you in Lakeview remember, if you lived here long enough, the coal ashes on the snow. I heard that story a million times. Right? So we went from that to now putting people in the middle of an industrial area between Rangeview and Hydro Road. Right? So back to the park question, we need parks. As much as we have the need for the province to dictate places to grow, we need places to play. Just look at Square One. It's a concrete jungle. There's not a parkland, not 1 acre of parkland left. Thanks.
So the Linear Heritage Park was actually part of the Legacy project of 2010, something that Professor John Danahy and our former councillor Jim Tovey worked on with the community. When the Lakeview Village, the Lakeview lands was put in place, one of the things that was put through at the same time that was not really well understood by most of us in the general public was something called a major node. And a major node was put forward on the MOPA 89. It was done with little community consultation with respect to that node as a major node from a community node of what it was. And at that time, there was a little sneak through of 8 to 15 stories in that area of what's now Rangeview, but ultimately will be residential units. The idea was that on that particular piece of land that goes from East Avenue, is that the spaces there, the buildings that exist there, are actually orientated in a certain way, and the lots actually line up with the way that Lakeview itself is facing. So it's slightly different from facing straight onto the road. So the response would be to try and keep along that corridor areas open that could be green. So it's not really a park, but it's keeping spaces green. So if you can think about Stonehooker, where you've got 100 feet, that would be reduced, but you'd still have some sort of green space that could be used. And it would be a string of parks that would stretch all the way through, making for a very interesting main street. This was one of the things that has been put forward for over 12 years now. And it's one of the things that we should have built in to the official plan. And sincerely, I do hope, because we have brought it forward time and time again, that it can be brought forward as part of what's going to be the development of Rangeview. And that is under discussion for a new master plan with ownership by a series of people that own the various buildings along that part on the south side of Lakeshore. And I think that could work very well for a community. It would also work very well for how we can look at a main street that would be far more interesting than having buildings set up right against almost the road. So that's just a little bit of an explanation, and it was definitely something that I feel very strongly about, and I think this community has felt very strongly about for over 12 years, and I think it's important that we hold on to that. Thanks.
I don't see any rebuttals, so we'll go to question 4, which will go to Andrew. Specifically to Orchard Heights, how would one go about advocating for the bridge connecting Orchard Heights Park to Alderwood?
That's a very good question. So again, advocating for things like pedestrian walkways or bridges shouldn't take 10 years. The replacement of the bridge that went from Ogden over to Applewood Village, oh my goodness. I mean, if that takes us 10 years to get done, we're going backwards. I mean, this is part of the problem back to why the province is pushing this. They're taking over the planning role and the red tape by the municipalities and jamming stuff through the approval process, because it takes 3 years to get through pre-approvals, then they get their zoning rezoned, then they get their permit, and then they go through 3 years of site plan. I spoke to one developer, it took 7 years to get his site plan approval for townhouses that were within the local area plan. So back to this question, I think through community consultation, quick consultation, and advocating either through the city budget process or through, again, private partnerships, let's design it and get it done. Very possible, very simple, should be like a 2-week discussion, not 10 years. Thank you.
So my understanding is there had been something put in place for this to move forward, but it's been put on hold. And I believe it's been put on hold because there are concerns within the community of having something that connects up to Alderwood on the other side. I think there needs to be a deeper community understanding between parties as to how this is going to affect Orchard Heights, and then how they're going to be affected by Alderwood on the other side. I do understand the concerns, and that is safety and security, and those are the things that need to be put in place in order to make that connection. My children, actually my youngest two, went to school in Alderwood, and it would have been really nice to have had a bridge, but I don't live in Orchard Heights. But I do realise that there are concerns within the community, and it does need a broader conversation. Thank you.
The bridge question is an interesting one for sure, and if it was just about going out and getting it built, it's funded. I don't know if they talk about that in Cooksville, but we do talk about it down here a lot, and I'll tell you, we ended up as a community had extensive consultation over this, and to the point where this is pre-pandemic. I went out and I knocked on each and every door in Orchard Heights asking the questions. And we came back with those answers. Then a little while later, what happened was the people at Own Dixie Mall came out with this outrageous proposal of 6,500 units, etc. And this was a jaw dropper to say the least. And then the concerns really got significant on what could that mean to Orchard Heights. And I thought, there's no way in the world we're making a decision on a bridge that you can't take back until we know what the path forward is. And so we had a city do a mail-out study, because at this point the pandemic had kicked in, and then afterwards worked with the Orchard Heights Ratepayers Association and came up with their survey report, and I respect the community and their decision in terms of what they've made. The funding is there, so anytime that bridge wants to be built, there is an ability to do that. There's a place for it, etc. But I put an indefinite hold on it, because what came out of this was not something that I would take lightly, and I want to be very respectful of everybody in Orchard Heights. So is there a future for it? There might be, but at this point in time, the community's just not certain of it, and so I'm just not confident to go ahead and do something like this with a lot of unknowns out there right now. Thank you.
I don't see any rebuttals, so we'll move to question number 5, which will go to Deb. What are your plans to deal with the increase in crime in our ward, specifically verbal and physical assault?
So as I've been speaking at the doors and canvassing, and we've pretty much canvassed everything apart from a few streets, I think, Barry. One of the things that I've heard is the concern for safety and security. Down on Lakeshore Road, we used to have a community police station. It's been gone for 10 years. We used to have an OPP station. That's been gone for a while. In fact, I think the mayor's using it as a campaign office. With the increase in population that's going to happen, we might as well start working on getting that back. The thing is, these things don't take 5 minutes, they take years, and I think it's important that we have a community police presence. We have had incidents, and obviously COVID has affected that with mental health. But I do believe that there is a need for presence. We don't have much police presence. We have a couple of cruisers and a couple of police officers. One of the police officers told me there was 2 of them. I believe there's actually 4 of them, but that still is not a lot for the ground that they have to cover in Ward 1, and which is quite significant. So I think it's time that we looked at that and how we can increase that going forward as our population changes. Thank you.
I'm just trying to keep the orders all straight here. Community safety is, without a doubt, it's an ongoing issue, and that comes from a whole variety of different areas and different pockets of the ward. Each area is very unique and different in terms of what we look at, what we're dealing with. We actually border 2 precincts, 11 Division and 12 Division. Also work extensively with Safe City, Mississauga. Safe City does a terrific job in the Community Watch program, and also they rolled out during the pandemic something called Business Watch, and also in Port Credit, for example, there's a paid duty police program, and we get updates on a monthly basis through the BIA, which I happen to sit on as well, and what the results of there are. Do we have issues in our community? We do. Are we working on them? Do we have community liaison people that are through the police departments? We certainly do. And that's something that we do work on. And also, when it comes to having more community policing and possible, community station like we did have when we had a really significant issue back in the 80s and early 90s. Not to say we have that, but at the same time, I think more of a presence is needed. This is something that I speak to the superintendents of both departments on a regular basis, and also that I have been speaking with Chief Nish on as well. So absolutely top of mind and wanting to keep everybody safe. And we do have an underbelly of a drug issue in Port Credit, I will say, and this is also something that is not lost on police, and also when it comes to folks at Peel, because there's an outreach program, and I have them out on a regular basis to come out and tend to some of our vulnerable people in the community. Thank you.
So I agree 100% with both my opponents. It is the 5th point on my Andrew's priorities, safe neighborhoods and streets. And I would either A, advocate for more funding for policing, or B, if that funding was not available through the budget process, yes, community police station is absolutely needed. I was stunned when I started canvassing in August, and I spoke to folks in Mineola, West, East, doesn't matter where, Lakeview, Applewood Acres, that the crime, talk about violent crime. They were telling me that there's been home invasions, there's been carjackings. I mean, I don't want to get into the details of the stories because they're quite vibrant, but I was floored. And I did do my own research with Chief Nish and the Peel Region Police, and wow, the reports are mind-blowing. So we do need more police presence. You know, we don't need them hanging out at CAWTHRA Bush and having a coffee all day. Everyone's told me that story as well. You know, they're there, they're active. You know, the 4 police officers are in the community, but they're stationed just in like 2 locations, but they don't move. They need to drive around and show presence, and then hopefully that won't happen. Some of these crimes, by the way, they've been with people that have been home during the pandemic during the day. We're not talking 3, 4 a.m. We're talking armed assault during the day. It is unbelievable. It needs to stop. There needs to be more police presence. Full stop. Thanks.
Question number 6, and we'll go Stephen. Describe your dream project that would result in a better quality of life for Ward 1 residents.
Wow, now that's a question. Oh my gosh. Well, I'll tell you, there's several that are ongoing right now when it comes to what we're doing in the community, and this is of all varieties. And one is to make sure that after we end up serving political life, and you know, I don't consider myself a politician. I consider myself a community advocate, and for me, it's I love serving. And I look at what can we do better. One thing that we haven't seen down in our communities is an outdoor skating rink that is artificially cooled, which we are getting right now. So that is one dream that is coming to life, and it's coming to life for a lot of young kids starting next year down in Memorial Park, for example. Bringing our emission targets significantly down right across Mississauga, Ward 1, the region. We're well on our way to doing that right now. Coming up with incredible parklands, we're doing that right now. So, you know, it's being born and raised in the community, looking at how we morph is something that is significant, and wanting to make sure that we've got something that is second to none, and we certainly do. We are truly in the jewel in the crown of Mississauga, and the time is now to make sure that we get things right. There's a lot of different headways and pressures that we face, but the biggest thing that we do have is a very vibrant and bright future, and there's a lot of projects right now that are going to make us the envy of the world. And that's truly the way we are, and part of that includes a very robust employment sector that is very future thinking. So, thank you.
So, Councillor Dasko, you must have been looking at my website, because I say that Port Credit and Lakeview are the crown jewels of Mississauga, right on the home page. So I thank you for that. I too am not a career politician. So if I had to dream about Port Credit, so I spend, again, why did I choose to run in this great ward? I spend about probably 95% of my time in Port Credit. My son goes to school here. He's 9 years old. I'm raising my family here. We use the community centers like Carmen Corbison, or we did until it's been closed for 4 years. We use the public libraries until it was closed for 2 to 3 years. Again, poor decisions to close both for that length of time without any project management or oversight. I mean, you could have built a new library in about a year probably, and you can build a new community center for sure in under 4. So more community centers. If we're going to add 56,000 people between Brightwater and Lakeview, wow. And I've spoken to Mr. Giannone is here, from president of FRAM, from Brightwater. He wants to put in either a YMCA or a community center in Brightwater. And between the red tape between the city and the province and back and forth, it's just, I don't know whether it'll ever get done. But I had close partnerships with both the MPPs and the MPs, and I would get it done. There needs to be more community centers. There needs to be more public libraries. There needs to be more parkland. The ratio of parkland to development. So it's great to jam in. It's great that all the developers want to put in, 20 to 40-story condos on every corner in Port Credit or on Lakeshore and Highway 10. But wow, as much as their own intensification policies say we need places to grow, we need places to play. Again, what for example is the demise at Square One. It is a concrete jungle. There's not literally, like, I drove through there on the weekend and it almost feels like you're going through a tunnel up Confederation, like it's scary. Like my wife was like, can we not do this again? I said, sure, no problem. We'll go around next time. So I think having a vision of what that looks like, and it's a hodgepodge. Every site, you talk to developers and their main frustration is that some sites are zoned minimum 2, up on Dundas, for example, Dundas Landowners Association. Behind them, behind that main corridor, there's minimum 2, but unlimited height. You could build where Mother's Parkers is, and in that kind of area, all the way actually down to Queensway, you could build 100 stories, just like Rogers is doing the M City up at Square One. And then other sites are only 2 stories. You don't need the hodgepodge, you need either consistency. It either is 6 stories or 4 stories, or it's 10 stories or 12 stories. And that helps them also with their acquisitions and their plans, right? They don't know what to pay per acre. When they're bidding on a site, they don't know if they're going to get a 8-story approval, a 12-story approval, or a 40-story approval. So I hope that answers your question. Thanks.
To be the envy of the world, we have to do something really special. And the jewel in the crown is so overused, and so 10 years ago. I'm sorry, we've heard it so much, and we don't see what's coming with that. I've scribbled a whole bunch of things that are, I think, ideas that could happen very quickly if we just got on with them. The linear heritage part we've just discussed, I won't go to it any further, could be awesome. The Indigenous and non-Indigenous cultural centre that has been on the cards for the last 4 years could be something so special to the Lakeview waterfront and that community, and could bring about so many good things. It is something that nearly everybody I speak to, it doesn't matter where you come from and who you are, from what walk of life, everybody sees the importance of reconciliation of the land, the water and the people. The small arms, it was saved by the community, and we used to have fabulous events in situ, run by the community, did it on a wing and a prayer. When the city took it over, now we have half use of the building. There is no plans that we see going forward for the full use. That now we're waiting for funding. The community could put in something just awesome themselves there, but we're not allowed to. The other one is, if anybody knows, the Lakeview Park Public School, something that has been like a siren down the street to me, to remind me every so often to get on with it, Deb. Finally got accepted for heritage designation this summer, and that happened because basically a community just kept researching it and following it up, and nagging until we got something done. We were turned down on it in 2019, and we've just got approved in 2022. And by the way, Andrew, Lakeview Ratepayers has found out that they were founded in 1921. They were founded in 1921 because they owned the land where the school was built. They were founded because a school was coming in 1923. So that's a nice little bit of heritage and history that we found out just by sheer coincidence of a developer saying something, developer's lawyer saying something to me at an LRT meeting. But the thing is we have a great opportunity on an acre of land in Lakeview. Lakeview Park Public School could be really special. Behind it is an acre of land. We could put seniors affordable housing on it. Now, how awesome would that be? That's special. These are some of the things that we can do very easily. The 15-minute city is something I've been begging the commissioner to do in that area for the last 4 years, and it still hasn't happened, and we should be having it. Mobility and transit, doing them all well. Those are the things we can talk to very easily. Thank you.
Going to walk very slowly because we have a small technical challenge with the camera over here. So. I have to check my schedule. In
the meantime, I'll throw up my second twig.
Oh, you want to push your button right now?
Yeah.
60 seconds for
You know, I do think that the best is ahead of us, and again, when it comes to the Lakeview Park Public School, the original part of it, that is also actually, I was the one that designated that, moving it forward to get it designated through the Heritage Advisory Committee. And it's something that yes, there was a collaboration of a lot of people that actually pulled in the same direction to move that forward. Habitat for Humanity was one that was also looking at that. So we're looking at doing something very special with that site and doing that together as a community. And the jewel in the crown, I will tell you, I won't apologize for that. It's something that Hazel has said over and over again, and it is as relevant as 10, 20, 30 years ago as it is today, because the waterfront that we have in Mississauga truly is something spectacular, and it will be even better as we grow. And when I say grow, I mean grow our parkland, 145 acres plus the conservation area. This is really something that is going to be the envy of the world. Thank you.
All right, question number 7 for Andrew. What initiative would you suggest for the city to invest in that would give Mississauga residents a return on their tax investments into sustainable energy sources?
Well, that's easy. I think I answered that. First point, electrify your fleet, right? Not only a cost savings, but you meet your emissions targets. One of the greatest emissions comes from the diesel bus fleet. So that's one thing that's sustainable. Another thing, you know, when we talk about operating efficiencies or looking at budgets, and the city kind of, you know, has a hard time managing that because a lot of this, as I mentioned, the fire, police, EMS are all unionized, as well as the bus drivers. I mean, there's ways to do this. Out of 5,500 city staff, 1,500 folks are on the sunshine list making over $100,000 a year. That ratio for any corporation seems to be out of whack. So why not issue a Lean Six Sigma, for those of you that aren't aware, but it's like a process review of the entire city staff, look at all the divisions, departments, and staff, and make sure you have the proper span of control. Once you achieve your proper span of control, maybe anywhere between 6 to 9 folks. I mean, some people are managing one person. There's like a director, a senior manager, a manager, and then a worker bee. And you're paying all that overhead for one FTE to do something, right? So there's ways to streamline the city, and just imagine what you could do with all of that cost savings, right? My guess is, I mean, you could definitely balance your budgets going forward, but you could probably, you know, put solar panels on all city buildings and have no hydro costs, for example. So there's easy ways to both save money and reach sustainable outcomes or success. So, thanks.
So while campaigning, one of the things that I've talked about is how can we manage the Lakeshore Corridor? And one of the proposals that I've just discussed with developers and with the province is the idea of running a great transit service that's more environmentally friendly down the Lakeshore Corridor, all the way from Clarkson, Port Credit, into Long Branch. Smaller buses that go every 5 minutes, that are environmentally sound, and looking at that and how we could move forward with that, knowing that we already have a Lakeshore Corridor there. What can that cost? We know we've got $55 million coming into a BRT. Can we think of using that money in a different way? The other thing will be passive building, which we know in Dwell, which is a subsidised housing unit between Lakeview and Port Credit has built. They've done a really good job. It was really interesting to meet a builder, a developer that did things in a different way. How can we look at passive building? And also, how can we look at environmental building standards that are more sustainable as we move forward with the projections that we have for all the development that's going to be coming to Mississauga. I'd really like to see those explored further with the city. We know that we have sustainability experts that are residents within our community, and I know that they have tried to have the conversation, and I think we're at the time when we should be doing that. Thank you.
We're at a point now too where things are moving further on in terms of how we can do things and how we can do things better, how we can do things different. Passive housing, as was mentioned, was something very much on the forefront when it came to the Inwell building. And if you have not had a chance to have a tour of it, it is really quite remarkable to go through just to see how each unit is heated and cooled and how that all works. And also know from a good friend that quite often you don't have to do anything because it's very comfortable. If anything, you have to open a window there just to get a breeze that comes through. And also what we have done as a city when it comes to the electrification component, that part is, and this rolled out just over a year ago, and it's with the Parks Department, and they're rolling out using electric lawn care equipment. And so essentially all of that equipment all loads up into a trailer. The trailer then gets plugged in to get fully recharged unto itself. So it's a one-stop shop. And that technology is starting to get rolled out, and it's not getting rolled out en masse, it's getting rolled out with incremental steps and metrics that get met off that to ensure that we're making sound investments as we move forward. And also the hybrid buses are another component, and of course district energy, as I mentioned earlier. We were a city that a few years ago, and it was great to get that encouragement and some incredible stories from some of our school children that talked about having a climate emergency. And that is something that we did announce as a city, and are working towards our reduction targets. Part of that, I will tell you, is through district energy, and we can achieve that 25 to 7,500 tons per year at full rollout. So thank you very much.
So this is going to be the last question of the evening, and then we're going to get into the closing statements. If the question you were hoping to be asked wasn't answered, I will just mention that there's another candidates get together, because I was told this is not a debate, this is a Q&A here tonight. Is it this Thursday at Topka? And is it at Clarke Hall, or is it? Okay, so Clarke Hall, Port Credit, this Thursday. I do want to say that you guys have been very well behaved. I was thinking in my head, I want to hold all future debates and meetings inside a church, because I don't know if that contributed to it, but so question number 8, and this will go to Deb. How serious do you consider homelessness in Ward 1? What is the councillor's responsibility with respect to dealing with it? How will you address it as councillor?
My very first campaign was in the second died, and it was online.
That's a tough one. I had thought about this a little bit. You know, I spoke to inclusionary zoning at Planning and Development in the summer because I saw the percentages they were putting out, especially in Lakeview at 1.5%. Inclusionary zoning means that the affordable housing that will be put into the number at in Lakeview was 1.5, And I know report credit, I think it's 4.5%. And I asked, what is that real number? What does that mean? What does it yield? Like, that's a percentage. And Andrew Whitmore turned around in his chair and he said, well, we figured it out. It's 100 units in Mississauga per year. That's not even a grain of sand for what we need. I spoke to LCP, and I've been a critic of what we're providing in the Lakeview lands for affordable housing. And I know Frank's here, and he will tell me that it's hard as a developer to put in more, what the costs are, but we seriously have to look at it. I was very involved back in 2014 with a charrette that happened with respect to East Avenue, and we have 2 brownstones that are still sitting there. Affordable housing was to be put in there, it's still sitting empty. They're having trouble even getting an RFP on it. I presented a 6-page report to Stephen 4 days before the council meeting to show how we could get a few more units out of it. It was ignored by the region, and to show how we could do something with those ground floor spaces. So the problem is we've got people living in our parks. I was horrified to find that people live in Lakefront Promenade, people live on Hydro Road, people are living in Memorial Park. The building Indwell, I met a gentleman, talked to him, and he said to me, well, it's a bit of a transition moving into this building. And I said, well, what's the transition? He said, well, I've been living for 3 years in Memorial Park, so I'm just getting used to having the 4 walls. A very pleasant chat. I think it's really important that we really start to addressing the affordable housing issue, or how we address getting people in out of the cold. And we have to look at buildings that are maybe surplus, that are not in use. How can we convert them and make more space for people that need homes? How can we feed those people? We know that we have the Compass that is just up the street that's been moved, and they've opened their own kitchen and they have their cafeteria, and we know that their increase is about 60% during COVID. We know that people out there are suffering, and we will see more people suffering as inflation is the way it is, and that the economy is going, the economy is the way it is. So I'd like to see more help from the city, more things moving faster at the city, so that we can address this issue.
Well, the homelessness issue is something that sadly has been increasing over the past few years. Part of it, and it's nothing new. We see the news, we see what's happening. We saw also what happened with Toronto and their decampments. Sadly, people without homes, and I don't like to say homeless, people without homes, the community is fairly small. And word gets out and people find out where resources are, and this is where some folks tend to migrate along. I work extensively with our Compass Food Bank and the work that they do there. There's an incredible group that do unimaginable work and they have yet to have, since the pandemic started to now, they have not yet had one down month. Their numbers keep increasing, and inflation certainly has not been helpful at all. There's a policy in Peel that has where nobody needs to stay out without a roof over their head if they so choose not to. A number of different reasons, complicated issue I think all of us are aware of. And so quite often, sadly, have had crisis workers from Peel out to meet with people to see what they need, how they can be helped, whether it's through an addiction issue, there's a lot of mental health issues, etc. Each story is unique and different, from living in cars to couch surfing, etc. And when it comes to, you know, getting in from the cold, I'm glad that was mentioned, the in from the cold and the in from the heat program. There was one over at West Edge that I had worked on with Pastor Matthew. And we had that all set up, and it was actually functioning very well. It was giving refuge to some folks that really did need it. Sadly, Pastor Matthew moved on to doing other things, and during the whole pandemic, it just was not a great spot for West Edge, and it's something that I'm continuing to work with them and the Region Appeal on to see if we can get that back on track as well. And then when it comes to longer term situations, when it comes to people's housing, quite frankly, the cities are not the ones in the development industry to have those solutions. They are parts of a bigger puzzle, and that bigger piece of the puzzle needs to come with financial resources, and that's especially from the federal government. They come out, they do ribbon cuttings and things like that for, you know, a handful of units, etc. They need to have a sustainable bucket of money like the CMHC that people can tap into to build proper affordable units when it comes to building out a true inclusionary zoning policy. So a lot more work to be done, which is currently being done right now as we speak. Thank you.
So again, back to my first point, it's not only the homeless that are suffering. Everyone that I've spoken to says the inflation, the food, the energy prices, the cost of housing, it's just unaffordable. It's unaffordable for seniors that are on a fixed income. They're telling me their property taxes are sometimes as much as their pensions. They're just breaking even. The young folks, their property taxes are as much as their mortgage payment. How can this continue? Pretty soon we'll all be homeless. That was my biggest fear when I started running and seeing what's happening. I mean, I have a BCom and I'm, like I said, worked for the banks for 25 years. So you look at the fiscal state, and it's on the news time and time again, daily. It's everyone is squeezed. So we need to get the budget under control. And speaking of the homeless, we do need inclusionary zoning. Ms. Goss mentioned 100 units. 100 units, oh my goodness. Let's build them like in 3 months. Let's get Mr. Giannone and Argo Group from Lakeview Partners and say, you know what? We want you to build XYZ here. Guaranteed they'd say, sure. I've spoken to many big developers, and they say, that for some odd reason, Commissioner Whittemore and the planning department doesn't like inclusionary zoning. They're more than happy to make 2 floors per condo affordable. Whatever that means. I mean, $400,000 is not affordable, and neither is $500,000. So we need some affordable rental units. So those affordable rental buildings just aren't being built. So let's incentivize developers to do that. And that's easy. I mean, that's a call to Trudeau and Ford and get it done. I mean, Bonnie can do that with some moral suasion, I'm sure. I mean, we're talking about peanuts. Right? So this business about the red tape, and that's the reason everything takes so long. Let's just say we need 100 units, we need it built over here, and let's get it done. Thanks.
I don't see any coffee stir sticks, so we're going to move to the closing statements. The openings were done in alphabetical. We're going to go in reverse alphabetical. So Deb, you'll be up first.
So I'd like to thank the organisers of tonight's debate, our question period, Sherway Homeowners Association, Applewood Acres Homeowners Association, and Orchard Heights Homeowners Association, and the Lakeview Ratepayers Association for all your hard work, because I know what it takes to get the evening, make the evening a success. It's a funny feeling for me to be sitting on the other side of the table after organising many of these events in the past. Thank you for being here tonight and for taking the time out of your busy lives to listen. I hope you've listened with an open mind and you've not been swayed by signs or slogans or anything like that. I thought I knew a lot of people in Ward 1, but after canvassing I realised that on every street there is a different story And it's been so interesting the last few months, meeting so many new people. I now know many more of you and many more of your issues. It has been really great to meet you and hear your stories and hear why you love our neighbourhood in Ward 1. I've heard your dreams, your fears, and why we should be moving ahead. I've listened and I've heard loud and clear, and I won't forget what you've said to me. After going to City Hall to fight on your behalf in the past, I am now running to be councillor so that I can bring City Hall to you. Our community that is the most impacted by change. I'm not here to speak on behalf of the development community or the mayor or previous mayors, but I am here for you. I'm not going to be cutting ribbons or standing in front posing for pictures. And I want to make sure that what I do comes from myself and is something that I do from hearing from my community. What I'm going to do for you is to make sure that you have the strong voice at City Hall in the decisions that are made that affect you in your daily lives, and equally bring back information into our community so that you are aware of what's going on at City Hall, because I find in a lot of cases I've heard that there isn't enough information. We are at a crossroads now. We can be great, but we must do better. Now is the time for bold leadership so that we have a Ward 1 where no one is left behind and we all win. It won't be easy, and we have a fight on our hands with the usual suspects. So please join me in making Ward 1 not only better, but great. Please vote for me, Deborah Goss, on October the 24th as your next Ward 1 councillor. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks again to all the ratepayers associations for organizing tonight's event. And I too know what that takes, and I applaud you. The turnout is tremendous. My fiscal platform stands as to be the only one. So, you know, we have the Green Sustainable platform and the Greener platform, but we need, at this time, we need fiscal conservative oversight. My background, with a strong business background, Bachelor of Commerce, Masters of Science, and my recent ICD.D designation, having served on boards and tribunals, I can bring that to the table. I can offer full accountability and transparency. And yes, this is not a job, this is not just a job, and this is not a job for photo ops, this is a job to represent the taxpayer. And I think on October 24th, the right choice is Andrew Gassmann. Thank you, and have a great evening.
Well, thank you again for hosting the event, and a special thank you to everyone that took the time to come out tonight. Our community and city is at an important point in our history. It's more important now than ever to have the strongest voice with leadership and experience to be your councillor in the new term of council. It's critical for us to build our parks, to continue to fight against irresponsible development, ensure our younger generation are able to have a place to call home in Ward 1, and to ensure our seniors are protected by empowering them to stay in their homes as long as possible and increase affordable housing for seniors. We have worked hard together as a community. The Carmen Corbison Community Center is currently under renovation and will have a swimming pool and the largest warm water therapy pool in the city. It will be a center second to none. This is not a time for change, it's a time for continuity with experience and leadership. We have a lot of projects planned and underway. Now it is to ensure that they are completed as intended and on budget and on time. On October 24th, vote for the strongest voice with experience and leadership to ensure the job continues to get done. Vote to re-elect Councillor Stephen Dasko. Thank you and good evening.
So just in closing, thank you everyone for coming out. Councillor, candidates, my fellow ratepayers, and of course you guys in the room. Hopefully you all have received your voter's card. It is this coming Monday. If you can't make it, it says all the locations and times where you can vote early. So thank you very much. I will just add in closing that the video will hopefully be on the Lakeview Ratepayers YouTube channel this evening or at some point tomorrow. So thank you all.